back to another episode of the JMA Podcast, specifically episode 210. Today we have a special guest, but before we get started, let's welcome my co-host Jeremy Fairhurst to the stage. Jeremy, my man, thank you for being here. Our special guest is Sam Breiter. He is the host of the Sam Breiter Podcast. He is an accomplished marathon runner. I believe he has a few other accolades as well under his belt. Let's welcome him to the stage. Sam, thank you
Yeah,
for being here, my friend. We missed you at the last episode. How you been?
yeah, I'm so sorry about having to push this a week here, but I've been really good. It's been kind of crazy times. Just moved from Denver, Colorado to Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and I've still been hitting the running, got a lot of big training goals that I'm focused on and everything like that, but everything's been good overall.
That's crazy. So I met you in New York City for your podcast previously. You've bounced all over the country?
Yeah, yeah, Cleveland is the third city I've lived in since I've graduated college. I actually, when I first graduated, lived in Cleveland, lived there for a few years, moved to New York, lived there for a few years, moved to Colorado, another few years, and now I'm back in Cleveland. This time around, it was just like following my girlfriend. She's pursuing her PhD in psychology and got matched to a program out in Cleveland. And so wasn't necessarily my idea, but I've got good connections here. And it is a great place to run, especially in the summer. So I've definitely been enjoying being here so far and being back.
How was that transition as a coach? How was that hard on your clients back in Colorado?
Yeah, there's pros and cons of it, right? I think what's been challenging is that I was actually coaching a local running group in Colorado. And so for those folks, I had to say goodbye because I obviously can't coach in person in Colorado while living in Cleveland. But they all have my contact information, right? So if they want to do something virtually with me, they know they can reach out. But I do coach a lot of runners digitally. And so for them, not as much of a challenge. I was actually coaching quite a few on the East Coast as it is. So I'm actually now in the same time zone as many. But every move is new people you can meet, new opportunities. I'll probably start to get involved in some running groups here and maybe starting my own one in the future. And once I do that, things will certainly bounce back when it comes to my coaching once I'm settled.
How are there any challenges with virtual coaching, and how do you kind of overcome that?
100%. Yeah, I think doing anything virtually, you're always going to have the challenge. I think the benefit is like the overall like flexibility, and just being able to coach anyone, but really just be able to have conversations at any time. Like I always tell my clients, like, hey, I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And they can text me and call me and they get all that real time sort of areas. But I mean, I think challenge wise is the fact that there's nothing better than when you're running and you have your coach there with you out in the trails or on the track and motivating you towards your goal and being able to give you direct feedback on whatever sort of areas you need to improve on. Like if I'm looking at someone's form and their form is off, it's a lot easier to do that in person than someone sending a video, because that video, they might be really having perfect form, but once they do a different workout by themselves, that form might not be there. So I think it's really just important for me when I coach runners digitally to really just be on top of them, doing like a lot of regular check-ins, asking them to send me over information, looking at their Strava data, seeing how they're actually improving and everything like that. And also just like having an open source for conversations. So there's definitely pros and cons.
So what got you into running? I know you're working on the goal of like hitting all 50 states, and that's a pretty big deal. I know you've hit like seven or nine, I think it is, somewhere in that ballpark now. So
Yeah,
what's the secret?
I've ran 9 marathons. I'm actually training for my 10th, which is going to be in October in Columbus, Ohio, which will be the 8th state that I've ran a marathon in. So there's a couple states I've ran more than one. So once I reach all 50 states, I'm sure I'll have like 70 plus marathons under my belt. But to answer your question of like what actually got me into running, I think just like most, at a young age, I was exposed to quite a lot of different sports. My parents definitely pushed me more towards like the non-contact sports route, although I did teeter with some football and some wrestling. I was just like not really gifted with, thick bones and whatnot. I was definitely a smaller kid on the size. Like I was the shortest kid in my grade until like really high school. Now I'm pretty average height wise, but like at a young age, I was super small. And so, I was playing baseball, basketball, soccer, sports like that. And I was always just like average. Like I was never super, standout-ish when it came to those sorts of sports. But whenever I would start doing those sports, I was always like the worst. And then as I like trained, I always like put in the extra work, I became average, right? And so I eventually, as I got older, started like having a hard time staying like really competitive within those sports. And I was like gaining a little bit of weight when I was in middle school. And so I kind of got pushed by my mom, honestly, to join track. And when I joined track, just like every other sport I had became a part of, I was like literally the worst one there. But then year after year, I kept doing it from middle school to high school. And I would be the one doing 2-a-days, training in the summer when most people took it off. And I eventually became, the best runner in my high school by like my junior year. And I've really, since then, centered my life around running. Running has provided me a lot of benefits, both mentally and physically, but also just like life moments, opportunities. I've met a lot of incredible people through the sport. So because of like all that the sport has given me, I think that's a big reason why I'm trying to get back to the sport with coaching, volunteering at events, motivating people who I think could benefit from having running in their life the way that it has benefited me. So yeah, that's what got me into it. I know it's a short question, a long answer, but really
No, it's beautiful. I like it. What's been the most rewarding moment in running then?
Yeah, like a singular moment you're trying to understand, or in
What
general?
well for you personally, like has there been a moment that's really stood out specifically attuned to running that's really been, I don't know, impactful or memorable in a special way?
Yeah, and I mean this was like 10 plus years ago at this point, but when I was a senior in high school, I actually did a milestone within running that most will never conquer, which was breaking a 5-minute mile. I only did it once, and when I did it, I ran 4:56, and it was on like a cold, windy day, and I was dealing with stomach problems earlier in that day as well, and just like very like anxious and nervous for the race. From like my junior year on, I was like very much dedicated towards that goal, and I was always getting like very close. Like I had a bunch of races where I ran like between 5:01 and 5:10. And it took like probably 20 attempts of me telling myself that, hey, I'm going to break this 5-minute mile to actually doing it. Right. And it happened on the day where I didn't even expect it to happen. And I think that race is such an important piece of my running career because it told myself that, hey, like no goal is too out of the ordinary. Like when I first had started running, I could barely even break a 10-minute mile. To cut that fully in half, I mean, that's just like insane. And to be able to just improve so quickly by literally pounding the pavement and just doing the right thing for myself, and treating my body right and just working super hard got me there. And, a goal I'm working towards right now is breaking a 3-hour marathon. My fastest time ever is 3:02. Same sort of situation. Like I'm right there. It might take 20 attempts to do it, just like it took me to break the 5-minute mile. But
Just
it's
out of
something that
curiosity,
constantly reminds me, hey, like these goals are possible. You just got to keep putting in the work and the attempts.
what is your current marathon time?
Yeah, 3:02. 3:02.
So I'm looking at a 350 somewhere in that ballpark.
That's great as well, though. I mean, most
I
people
mean,
never
I
do a marathon.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying most people never do it, and to break 4 hours, I mean, that's fantastic.
Well, the first time my right leg seized up, and I was like dedicated the next time to doing so much better. And I trained up. I did like I really worked for this. Like I don't know if you know Albany, Schenectady area, but I went between Albany and Schenectady down Route 5 up and down, and that's like rolling hills and it's busy traffic and everything, but it's just straight away. And I'd go up and I'd come back down because that'd be 24 miles exactly. And I was working for like a whole year towards it, and then the second time, body still seized up.
Damn.
I looked like the straw man, the scared, like just kind of hobbling along.
That's the worst.
It was an absolute nightmare, but I was happy. I wanted a 330, and I ended up with a 350, and I was like, okay, I'm taking it. I'm done. I'm good. I can't do this anymore.
Fair enough.
No, I love running, but I think marathoning takes a special kind of like mindset. Has there been anything that like has really helped you with the long runs, like keeping focused?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you need to find ways to keep it interesting and like understanding yourself as well. So I think it ranges depending on the person, but yeah, I mean, I definitely after doing like 4 or 5 miles and I'm doing like a 10+ mile day, it's very easy to get into that mental headspace of being bored or just like not feeling it. Right. And so like that's when I tell myself, okay, what can I do to make this run more interesting? And I think really some of the areas that I can do is one, I enjoy listening to music or a podcast like this, calling someone on the phone, like there's no problem to do that, catch up with a family member or friend, or even like running with other people. I love running with other people when I can. It doesn't always work from like a timing perspective, but there's a bunch of great running groups, regardless of whatever city you're in, that you could probably find where you can run with other people. And those runs just go by so much quicker. One, because you're probably going to be able to run faster when you're with other people. The body has a funny way of just deciding to let you run faster, and it doesn't feel as hard when you're with a group. But the conversations, you're not like looking at your watch every 2 minutes being like, oh, how far in am I? Right. And
Do
so,
you feel like with a group run you get a better run? Because I always feel like my runs end up being slightly better. I feel like I have a better pace, I have more energy, and I feel like I could probably get more miles out. And I don't know what it is. Maybe there's a synergy going on or something there. What's your opinion?
yeah, for sure. I mean, the brain is funny, and there's probably like science behind this that I don't fully understand, but it seems like us as human beings, whatever we're trying to do, we perform better in groups, in tribes, whatever you want to say. So if I'm going to run with other people, I really try to do it either during a speed workout or during a long run. Because for a speed workout, I did 800-meter intervals earlier. I did it by myself. My times were not where I wanted it to be. It was decent times, but I know for a fact if I ran with two other guys who were better than me, or even at like the same ability, I probably would have ran 5 to 10 seconds quicker for those intervals, just because you have more essentially, brain flow that's telling you, hey, like push harder, and you're less quick to give up on yourself on those runs. And the same goes with the long runs. Like you might want to give up on mile 8 or 9 and you're with a group and you get to 8 or 9 and you're like, oh, well, we only have a few more miles. That really went by quick. So it's amazing. I mean, I try to not do like all my runs with people because just a busy schedule. And if I'm doing like an easy run, sometimes it's nice to have those runs on your own where you can use that as time to be creative and think about ideas and brainstorm in life. But I think like at least 1 or 2 days a week, if you can get together with like someone who's better than you or a group of people, it's fully worth doing and you'll improve.
And there's definitely, I feel like, a piece to running on your own too, with like you mentioned, like kind of taking that time for yourself. I feel like the other day I was pissed off about something, and I just like, fuck it, I'm gonna go for a run. And I remember just a short mile, but I came back feeling much more level headed, and I was like, okay, it's exactly what I needed for the moment. And you can do that in like if you practice your running, you can do a mile run in 8 minutes, you know, in and out of the house. 10 minutes throwing on the shoes.
The hardest part is getting on the shoes and leaving the door, I like to say, because it's just the decision to do it. But once you step outside and you do it, everything starts clicking and coming together in a really brilliant way. So, yeah.
If you had someone like Jeremy here who has never ran a day in his life, and he wanted to start running theoretically, I doubt he does, but let's say he does. Um, what is the first steps he should start doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that you want to do is like decide your why. Like, what has you actually running? Because very few people run without having a specific reason to run and see that last, right? And so, I mean, Jeremy, you look like a pretty, thin and shaped guy. Like, I doubt for you it's like for weight loss, right? But like maybe for you it's like finding, a bigger purpose, a sense of accomplishment. I'm just making this up, right? I don't know. I don't know too much about you yet, Jeremy, but running, I think, gives you that. And so a lot of times I tell people, if you're looking for that purpose, sign up for a race, set a specific goal. Maybe it's just to finish that race, and that's completely fine. Maybe it's to finish the race without walking at all, or maybe you want to run a specific time. But the amazing thing about running, as I shared at the beginning, it's something that you can really, from like a metric standpoint, see yourself quickly improve on. You run a few days a week for a month or two straight, you're going to be quicker than you were when you first got started. As long as like your diet is like staying in good condition and you're not like injuring yourself or overdoing it. But like, it is really fulfilling to see that level of improvement. Kind of like if you're weightlifting and you first start lifting 20 pounds and then a few months go by and you can lift a little bit more weight. Well, with running, I think it's like a lot more significant of an improvement that you might see. So I think like just finding your purpose, right? If someone else who's listening here wants to lose weight, well, set a goal, have running as that goal. I think it's really just finding your purpose. And when you are struggling to want to go out and do that, reminding yourself about the reason why you're getting after it. You want to get down under 200 pounds. Well, if you're 220, remind yourself, hey, I'm 220. I do need to get this run today. But I think it's important to have structure, right? Like to have a plan about what your run should look like instead of just going out there and running as hard as you can for a few minutes and being exhausted. So, I'm obviously a coach that can help folks who need that. I'm not saying you have to use me. There's like a bunch of free information on the internet, like watch YouTube videos about how to get out there and run, use AI to help generate you a starter plan based on who you are. Because I think if you go out there without a purpose and a plan, that's where you might get a little bit of trouble, right? So I think that's like the beginning piece is finding the purpose, have a plan, and then just doing it, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, definitely I can see how like the metric, being able to see a metric change in what you're improving in, like it's kind of really hard when you're doing something like that. The only like sport I really have much experience with is more martial arts related, and like, and unless you're like going outside of your gym or anything, especially if you're training with like the same people and you're all learning the same stuff at the same time, like it's hard to see your own improvement. And then like you can go out and compete, and suddenly like you don't know who you're competing against or how hard they've trained or what their background is. Whereas like running seems to be much more personal. Like you could write down, this is my time today, this is my time a week from now, and set that based off of that. There's an actual like visible metric way of seeing your progress. I can see the benefit in that in a lot of ways, and I can't imagine trying to a marathon's what, like 20 something miles, isn't it?
26.2.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, when we talk about how hard it is to like grapple for 3 rounds, and I can't even do that at all. I can't imagine trying to run 25 miles, let
Sam,
alone.
what was your first marathon experience like? What did that feel like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't horrible by any means. I think for a lot it is. But I think for me, like when I ran my first marathon, it was the Philadelphia Marathon. It was back in, I want to say 2021 in November. So we're talking 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I had like created my whole page and everything like that, creating content shortly before that race. But I had been running before that race for probably 10 plus years. I had done like countless 5Ks, 10Ks, ran track and field in high school, coached in college, and ran with those runners as well. And then I like started getting into half marathons and ran a couple half marathons. So I had quite the journey. And then when I actually did that first marathon, I had like a very strong time and like a bunch of like emotion that I like couldn't believe how I felt during that race. That I would pay to honestly get every race, because sometimes, you don't get that sort of, high, runner's high that I got from that race. But that was like an insane runner's high. I did hit the wall on mile 18, which is like a common occurrence in running where like my first 17 miles were like really consistent, really fast. And then like my last 8 were kind of like, I pushed through, I was cramping up, I didn't really walk. But I also like, there were some things I didn't know. Like I wasn't fueling the way that I fuel now. I barely drank any water during the race. But I was like younger and like very energetic and excited about the sport. So I had success. But there's a lot of people now we see who they like have never done a race, and then they just sign up for a marathon and they train for 3 months and they do it. And it's really, really brutal.
The number of people you see on the side of the races, like for a half marathon, even a half marathon, it is crazy the number of people who are unprepared who run into those things.
Yeah, it's honestly dangerous. Like I never want to like discourage someone from doing something hard for them, but I think there are certain milestones you want to achieve when you're first getting into a sport. It's like, I know you guys, you do the fighting, right? You're not just going to like jump in the rink with Mike Tyson tomorrow, I don't think. Like you're going to fight some people who are more your level and where you're at. And then eventually, if you get to that point, then you'll go ahead and step up. But like, you got to be pretty strategic. Otherwise, like, you're risking injury or like serious consequences, which we've seen in the sport.
And it's crazy because like I said, I'm fairly fit, I'm fairly competitive, I did the 9+1 to get into the marathon both times. So I did races throughout and I was training throughout, and both times like I still encountered like major issues, like my one leg locked up, and then the last time my whole body locked up. And that was scary, like in that it was in the last stretch where that happened. In my first attempt for the marathon though, like I realized I fucked up at the halfway point, because at that point my I looked at the time. You know how they have those nice little times where they show you how fast you're going and everything, and I had beat my previous half marathon PR by 10 minutes.
Wow.
No. That was when I looked up. I was like, no. I threw it all away at them. I knew it was over. I knew it was done.
Like you expended 2 minutes energy early.
Oh, way too much energy. So like when you're running you're running a marathon, right? If your PR on a half marathon is like what kind of number should we say here? Like, I don't know, like an 8 minute. You want to at least bring it down to a 9 minimum if you're going for a full marathon, because like you're going to overexert yourself over time. Your body can't sustain.
It seems like there's a lot of similarities between the two sports, honestly. It's pacing yourself, it's dieting, it's not jumping in too far ahead. Like, okay, there's a question. Then if you're trying to jump straight into running, okay, obviously most people aren't ready to do a marathon or even a half marathon right out the rip. Can you kind of like explain what some of like starter runs you should look out for, like some of the milestones that you would recommend for a beginner?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when I work with runners and it's their first week of training with me, what I will typically have them do is, okay, like on your first day, what I want you to do is just run nice and easy, where it's like does not feel too difficult for you to have a conversation with a person, right? And run as far as you can at that pace. You obviously want to be running quicker than you would be if you're walking. And then once you feel like you're like really like losing track of your breath and you wouldn't be able to have a conversation, I want you to stop. And then let's look at the data, right? Were we able to run 2 or 3 miles? Was it less than 1? What was our heart rate? I'm going to look at all those things. And that kind of gives me a clear picture. Okay, this is like this person's level of endurance that they have right now. Then the next thing I'm going to have them do, after probably taking like a day or 2 off after that, is do a time trial. So the time trial distance is going to be based on like what they're training for, but also like their endurance that I saw from the previous run. And like, let's say they tell me, hey, I want to run a 5K. They were only able to run 2 miles, for example. I'll say, okay, like I want you to run 1 mile and I want to see how quickly you can do it without stopping, as hard as you can. So from those 2 areas, I then know, okay, this is how fast someone is currently right now and how long they can actually like run. And then I'll create a plan from there with paces and distances of what they should do to be able to improve their endurance as well as their speed. So I typically have people increase weekly mileage like 5 to 10% each week. Someone might start off at 5 miles. After 2 or 3 months of training, they might be at 20, 25 miles a week. But I think a starter race, a really good starter race, is the 5K, because I think like almost anyone can do a 5K, as long as like you're not like insanely overweight. You might need to walk part of it for sure, but like it's a doable race to kind of get your feet wet into the sport and then again test your fitness. And then we assess from there, okay, do we want to go up to a 10K? Do we want to try to get a faster 5K? Is a half marathon doable based on like how well you did on this 5K? And it's kind of like the crawl, walk, run aspect of races and milestones and everything like that of how I approach my coaching with my runners.
5Ks are definitely one of the easiest races to do, and they're some of the funnest too. You got them in almost every community. You can probably find one in like your local town, wherever the hell you are.
Yeah.
I like NYRR though. Always going to recommend all of those races for sure.
Yeah, no, they're great. I mean, like, it's like you said, community wise, it's great. I mean, they're often like under $40, a lot of them being like 20, 25. You get a free shirt, maybe a medal and some snacks. It all kind of pays for itself because there's a lot of sponsors and everything like that. And like, I personally think there's not many things that are better than like getting breakfast after running a 5K early on a Saturday morning and not being hungover, compared to like my past self. So I just like highly recommend it. And like I ran a 5K a couple weeks ago here in Cleveland. It was for a good cause and everything like that. And it's a really great way to meet new faces and everything like that. I mean, if we want to talk about purpose, if you can't find a purpose, like hey, like I'm happy with my physical health, my mental health, all those things, like running's a way where you can meet new people. Like I met my girlfriend through running, right? Like there's so many little areas and benefits that you never know what can happen with running.
And it has a nice community too. Like I think some of the most memorable races I've ever had were in New York, and the way they kind of build their community up there. I always tell people each event is like a little festival. And then like you said, to give them purpose, like there's a lot of charities to get involved with if you're in the New York area. But then even locally, there's always like a cancer run, there's always a charity run for kids, so on and so forth. I mean, so there's always a way to get involved.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, my friend. Well, how about some trivia?
Let's do it. I love
All right.
trivia. So when you brought up to me before we got started that we were going to do that, I'm excited. We'll see how good I do. But yeah, let's make it happen.
All right, let me disable my camera real quick. I just forget how to do. Oh, right. Boom, there we go. All right, first question. My friend, fastest marathon finisher in a record eligible race.
Yeah, so I know the answer to this one, but I'll give a little backstory. So a lot of people think it's Eliud Kipchoge because he did break a 2-hour marathon, but it wasn't a record eligible race. The fastest time was by Kelvin Kiptum, who sadly is no longer with us. He died tragically, but he did it in the Chicago Marathon, and his time is like right above 2 hours.
I think it was 201.
Yeah.
Something. Yep. You are correct, my friend.
Awesome.
And the next question. When was the first official New York City marathon?
Ooh. I don't know if I'm going to get this one right for sure. I mean, the New York City Marathon, it occurs, in the fall now. It wasn't the first world major marathon. The first world major marathon that ever happened was in Boston, but that was like early 1940s or 50s, I want to say. I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with October 24th, 1965. I might be wrong, though.
Tick, 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 tick. Sorry, I gotta wait for the...
Did you hear my response?
Oh, yeah. A.
Oh, it's big. Brutal.
Yeah. The underlines I forgot. I was waiting to see if it gave it away.
No worries. Well, that's good to know. That was a good question for me. A good trick one.
All right, my friend. Which race is not in the Abbott World Marathon Majors?
Yes, that would be Montreal. Tokyo and Berlin both are. What's cool about Tokyo is just like that's a super fast race. In Berlin, they also have like a roller skating race as well that you can do that weekend, and it's right around the timing of Oktoberfest. So that's a lot of people
festivities.
Love that.
I heard Berlin is a flat course.
It is, yeah. So another fast one.
That was the one I thought Kapochet, you mentioned earlier. I thought Kapochet did officially make a record time that was close to the breaking point, but not over. in Berlin.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
But yeah, no, Kelvin was definitely the current holder. All right, my man. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So it's pretty easy to find me. I am on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and I do have a podcast. Content for me has been a little slow recently just because with the move and everything like that. But now that I'm starting to get a lot more settled, my content will definitely be picking up. Coaching is always consistent. So if you do want a personalized running plan, we could just have a conversation. You can reach out to me either via my email, which is runbreiter@gmail.com, or go to my website, runbreiter.com, and submit a form, and we can make something happen. But if you want to just be a free consumer of the content, that's also highly appreciated as well.
Run Breiter comes JMA approved.
Love that.
All right, my friend. Well, without further ado, I think this is the close. Till next time, guys.
Yeah, super fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, man. It's been a
Thank
blessing.
you.
See you later.
Peace.